It's a partnership.
Right.
It's a partnership of like-minded countries. The 4 countries, the United States, Japan, Australia, and India. The other 3 have an alliance among them, but India changes the very nature of this association.
Right.
Because we have always been...
And it becomes a partnership there.
Exactly. So it's a partnership. Now, the nature of the Quad's partnership is essentially to bring the synergies that all of us have, the 4 countries have, for the larger global good and the regional good in the Indo-Pacific. What is happening now, as you very rightly said, is that this world is in a flux. But I would think that there are underlying, actually the current challenges which are all over the world. You can see them in terms of wars, in terms of tariffs and all types of things. They, to my mind, they do not detract from the necessity of Quad. On the contrary, my view is that they strengthen and reinforce the necessity of Quad and its validity also. Because it is through this rubric that these 4 countries can just not enhance their own cooperation, such as for minerals, critical minerals, secure supply chains, maritime security, energy security, and disaster relief, climate change, education and health. These are the areas in which Quad countries have delivered. India's status as a first responder, for example, and the capabilities of other countries in the Quad.
Good morning, all of you. A very warm welcome to another episode of SIOS Waves, the podcast for Society for Indian Ocean Studies. And today we have a very special guest, a very distinguished diplomat, career diplomat, who has held very important postings. And before we begin, I'll introduce Ambassador Gopal Baglay. Shri Baglay was the High Commissioner of India to Australia, a very important posting indeed in these times, from 2024 to 2026, and to Sri Lanka, our immediate neighbor in the Indian Ocean, from 2020 to 2023. And he joined the Indian Foreign Service. He goes back to 1992 and worked in Indian diplomatic missions in Ukraine, Russia, the United Kingdom, Nepal and Pakistan, which is another very important as well as a very sensitive posting. And he was a Deputy High Commissioner there in Pakistan. In India, his assignments include Joint Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister and in the Ministry of External Affairs as its spokesperson, another distinguished post, and Joint Secretary in the Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran desk. He otherwise pursues yoga, hiking, mind training, ways of harmonious and sustainable living, and he studies diverse religions and cultures. Welcome, Ambassador Baglay. It's a great pleasure to be hosting you at our podcast, and I'm sure you'll enrich us in this podcast with all your experience which you have been serving as a diplomat, and hopefully we'll get a number of more insights from you. And to begin with, let me ask you about your most recent stint in Australia, where you were the High Commissioner. And since you were that was also your last assignment, I guess.
Yes.
So let me begin with asking you that, first of all, does Australia itself consider itself as an Indian Ocean power? That's one question which bothers us, because its orientation or most of its population is located on the eastern coast. And that's how I understand Australia, because as geographers, we know that it's located there. Second, going by its alliance with the United States, it has a Pacific orientation, and the fact that its population lives on its east coast. Do you think this even is a relevant question to ask about its orientation? So, Ambassador Baglay.
Thank you, Professor Meena. I must first of all begin by saying good morning to you and namaskar, and good morning and namaskar to all your viewers. the distinguished people who will be associating with this podcast. And I must also thank the Society for Indian Ocean Studies and its chairman and yourself, chairman, the distinguished Ambassador Sudhir Devre sir, who was my first ambassador when I was posted to Ukraine in 1994. And thank you also for a very elaborate introduction of mine. I'll try and answer your questions. Look, in terms of the geography, when we look at Australia, it's a continent.
Yes, sir.
It's not a country, just a country. It's a continent. And there are oceans around it, there are waters around it by the virtue of being a continent.
Yes.
There is, of course, the Pacific Ocean, the Southern Ocean, and then, of course, there is Indian Ocean. If you look at Australia, what you realize is, like you said, the population is mostly on the eastern side and east-southeast. But importantly for India and other countries in the Indian Ocean, I would say Australia is also an Indian Ocean country. And this is one of the reasons why it is just not a member of Indian Ocean Rim Association, but now along with India, it's a very active participant and trying to sort of put more content and substance in IORA. In terms of the geography also, if you look at Australia, the mainland has a coastline of more than 36,000 kilometers. If you include the islands, the coastline of Australia is somewhere 58,000 kilometers. And 20,000 kilometers out of that is with the Indian Ocean.
Okay.
So depending on what you are looking at, just the mainland or the islands also, I think roughly 1/3 at least of Australian coastline is Indian Ocean coastline. Very early in my career, I had the privilege of welcoming to Australia the External Affairs Minister of India. In fact, just 2 weeks after I had arrived to take up my assignment. And the reason for his visit, primary reason for his visit, which was in Perth,
Yes, sir.
was attending the Indian Ocean Conference along with his Australian counterpart, the Foreign Minister of Australia, Penny Wong. This was February 2024. In that conference, as other Indian Ocean conferences, Australia has always participated very actively. In fact, even in the last one, Foreign Minister Penny Wong participated. Perth, by the way, is called the Indian Ocean capital of Australia.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
West Australia, of which Perth is capital, as West Australia is the state. Like we have states, UP,
Yes.
Rajasthan, Bihar, Punjab, etc. Australia has states, and Western Australia by landmass is the largest Australian state. In fact, it has about 1/3 of the mass of the Australian mainland. So we cannot underestimate the importance of Perth merely because its population is less than other big cities like Sydney and Melbourne. Western Australia is very important for minerals, for mining, for hydrocarbons, and for connecting westwards. Australia also sees itself as equally as an Indian Ocean country, because while it has important neighbors in the Pacific Ocean,
Yes.
the Pacific island countries, but its relations from the ancient times have been with the rest of the world also. And it is through the Indian Ocean where it connects with countries like India, both in terms of ensuring the maritime prosperity, maritime security, and addressing other challenges which we share with Australia.
Oh, great, sir. Sir, it's a great insight that Perth is the western capital of Australia, because as a keen follower of cricket, I've always thought of Perth as the fastest wicket in the world.
Pitch.
Very fast pitch.
Absolutely.
And Waka. But I think now they have shifted to Optus Stadium.
Optus, there's another stadium. And in fact, if you permit me just
Yes,
one
sir,
more
please.
incident. When the Honorable External Affairs Minister participated in the Indian Ocean Conference, the Chief Minister of Western Australia, who they call Premier
Yes,
of Western Australia, Mr. Cook, Roger Cook, he had hosted a reception for the visiting dignitaries
Okay.
on the beach or at a facility on the beach. and it was a reception in the evening, and you could go, and that's a fantastic thing to see sun set in the Indian Ocean. Not many people think of Australia that it would have sunset into the Indian Ocean, but that's what it is.
Oh, that's so. So that's these things only can come from the field itself. Sir, still remaining with the India-Australia relations. Sir, we have seen that our relations have been growing steadily in the last 20-25 years. And can you specifically pinpoint the reasons for this? We have just spoken of WACA and cricket, but does it go beyond cricket, or do we really have common interests in the Indian Ocean region and in the larger geopolitical construct, which is very recent again, of Indo-Pacific?
That's a very important question, and not just for keen cricket enthusiasts and followers, of which there are plenty in Australia, by the way, including in the highest political levels. But let me come to what you have asked. Yes, cricket is an important link between India and Australia, has been, but do you know it's not just cricket? There are other seas also.
Yes, sir.
Often there was a time when the relationship was thought of, India-Australia relationship was thought of in terms of 3 C's. Cricket, Commonwealth, and curry. So they spoke of the linkages at the people's level, which is cricket, and the cultural influence. Australia is, by the way, a very multicultural country now.
Right.
So curry and Commonwealth, because we both shared the colonial history. As you know, Australia was also a colony. It became an independent country in the early parts of the 20th century, and so did we later on, but we are a full republic. But do you know that there were just not 3 C's? There's another C,
Right.
which is the cameliers, the camel drivers.
Okay.
When Australia was discovered in the 18th century, in the 19th century, people started discovering its mineral wealth.
Right.
But as you know, most of Australia is the hinterland, is desert,
Yes,
and there was no means of transportation. So what opened the interior of Australia to the world were these camels.
Okay.
And where did these camels and their drivers come from?
It came from
The
India.
then British India.
Oh, right.
And there were many of them were Afghans, many of them came from the then British India, many of them came from the northwestern part of India, and therefore I would say cameliers is another sea which is often not taken into cognizance, but it is very important because that's what ensured the transport through the length and breadth of much of the hinterland, which is desert. If you go from Adelaide, from in the south, to Darwin in the north, there is a train now which goes, it's called the Ghan.
Okay.
Ghan, Ghan. And do you know where the word Ghan comes from? Afghan.
Oh.
Because these cameliers, as I said, were Afghans. But if you travel that distance, or even part of it, you would see that Australia would not have been Australia. The world would not have discovered its mineral wealth and would not have benefited from it without this internal transportation, because at that time, in the early 19th century and middle 19th century, before the railways came, before the roads came and road transport came, there was nothing, there was no means to move with the camels. But that's history. Now let me come to the current context. A very big fan of India in Australia, in their government nowadays, is a member of parliament from Western Sydney, which is a predominantly multicultural, you can say, even with a large Indian population. The gentleman is called Dr. Andrew Charlton.
Okay.
He is in their system a cabinet secretary, which is a political appointment. He's a minister, and he is also the chair of the India-Australia Parliamentary Friendship Group.
Oh.
He's a young star, rising star, very, very well respected and very loved and admired by not only just his electorate, much of which are multicultural and Indian, as I said, but by many others. He wrote a book in 2023, Australia's Pivot to India.
Okay.
And in that he has dealt with these 3 C's, but has also said that now the relationship is transformed into 4 D's.
Okay.
And what are these 4 D's? This is democracy, defense, diaspora, and dosti.
Oh.
So it is obvious that we have now transited into common interest, convergence of interests, convergence of our values, and we both subscribe to the desirability, and we work together for a free, open, prosperous, stable, secure Indo-Pacific. So there are convergence of interests, there are convergence of our objectives, and we work together. And as I said, dosti, of course, he has mentioned in his book, dosti is a rough translation of the Australian concept of mateship. Now, mateship is more than friendship.
That's right.
You can be friends, but when you say mate, you are a mate. When Australian terms, it is something like yarana.
Oh.
You see, dosti is dosti, but yarana is yarana.
Yarana is different.
So his postulate is that this relationship has now a lot of content. And what is this content? From critical minerals to education, from securing the supply chains to looking after the maritime security and challenges and cooperating with other states both in the Indian Ocean and in the Pacific. There is a lot of convergence between India and Australia, both as countries and part of a system which believes in rule-based international order and supports multilateralism. Having said that, let me add another D to it.
Yes,
it's just not 4 Ds, it is 5 Ds, and the other D is development.
Right.
Development means economic cooperation, economic prosperity for the people. That's where really the exciting new phase of India-Australia relationship lies, which is higher commerce, more investment, possibilities of investment into each other's country, more flow of technical and skilled people, more cooperation in the field of education and even sports, and just not cricket.
That's right. I know that India also plays a lot of hockey with Australia.
Yes.
So that's
this is the year, this is the 100th year. Okay. From in 1926, the first men's Indian hockey team
went to Australia,
went to New Zealand and Australia and played matches, and that was commemorated this year.
So, sir, expanding the scope of our discussion, we know that Quad, the quadrilateral dialogue, generates a lot of headlines in India, and of course in Australia, I'm sure, and other countries also. But sir, do you think that is it a kind of a potent alliance in the context of the Indian Ocean? Because first of all, there is difficult US presidency under Mr. Donald Trump, and then there is this ongoing war in West Asia, which of course kind of abuts the Indian Ocean, and India perhaps has been left as a mute spectator. So sir, it will be great if you can kind of elaborate, where does Quad, where does India, Australia fit into this larger?
I would, if you don't mind, Professor Meena, I would first of all say that Quad is really not an alliance. It's a partnership.
Right.
It's a partnership of like-minded countries. The 4 countries, the United States, Japan, Australia and India, the other 3 have an alliance among them. But India changes the very nature of this association.
Right.
Because we have always been...
And it becomes a partnership there.
Exactly. So it's a partnership. Now, the nature of the Quad's partnership is essentially to bring the synergies that all of us have, the 4 countries have, for the larger global good and the regional good in the Indo-Pacific. What is happening now, as you very rightly said, is that this world is in a flux. But I would think that there are underlying, actually the current challenges, which are all over the world. You can see them in terms of wars, in terms of tariffs and all types of things. They, to my mind, they do not detract from the necessity of Quad. On the contrary, my view is that they strengthen and reinforce the necessity of Quad and its validity also. Because it is through this rubric that these 4 countries can just not enhance their own cooperation, such as for minerals, critical minerals, secure supply chains, maritime security, energy security, and disaster relief, climate change, education and health. These are the areas in which Quad countries have delivered. India's status as a first responder, for example, and the capabilities of other countries in the Quad, they are being synergized. So if you see the last meeting of the Quad foreign ministers, which took place in New Delhi just the last week, end of May, what it has done is essentially reiterated the commitment of the 4 countries to the mission of Quad, to the objectives of Quad, and I think this partnership is needed by other countries in the region also, so that they can benefit from the strengths of these countries, not just individually but as a group. So I would say that irrespective of the individual administrations whose priorities may change, or the accent on the priorities may change from time to time, and within one administration also they change.
Yes, sir.
I think what Quad brings to the table, what Quad brings to the world, is of a lasting value.
Sir, that's a very valid point, because I remember the alliance or the partnership came into being in the very first place during the 2004 tsunami. So they started from there. So the value which they brought was humanitarian assistance.
Yes, so, absolutely. And I should also mention here that there was a reason why, although the concept came there, but it did not reach the leadership level. Right. If you see the book of External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, the second book, Why Bharat Matters, he has devoted a chapter to Quad. Right. In that, and he has analyzed why Quad came about, where it came about. And one of the reasons that he has given is that India's relationship with these other three countries grew very significantly in those years between 2007 to 2017. Right. India-US relations, India-Japan relations, and India-Australia relations, which he has called in that book at that time, perhaps visibly the most growing relationship of India.
And I think it's natural also, because if you look at Japan and the United States, they are still located further away from us. We have a geographical proximity to Australia, and we are natural partners in that sense in Indian Ocean. And going further, we know that there is one certain alliance, this time not a partnership, that is AUKUS,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Which is there in the Indian Ocean. Not in the Indian Ocean, but in the larger setup of Indo-Pacific or geopolitical construct. So what do you think of this AUKUS? Will it be like kind of become a very effective alliance, or will it become a kind of a dominating alliance in the Indo-Pacific? Because the actors involved, two of them are of course Security Council countries, states, the US and the UK, and then you have Australia, which has been a very close kind of they've always shared responsibilities around the world, military responsibilities with the US and NATO, Australia. So do you think is it going to make a lot of difference, or is it going to be a dominant actor, the AUKUS, or is it just an alliance for kind of defense cooperation?
I think it is closer to the last that you mentioned. As far as I understand, and again, I have just been a diplomat. 4 months ago, I retired. While I was in service, I would not have commented in public on AUKUS, because as a diplomat from India or any other country, it won't be correct for me to comment on any other country. But I will enjoy my relative freedom now to speak about it a little more than I would have otherwise 4 months ago. See, AUKUS is not really an organizational subset of NATO. It is not an organization in that sense, obviously, or perhaps in any sense. It is more a program. Right. It is a program for the construction of certain platforms, and these platforms are submarines for the defense of the three countries, which can be used by the three countries. And these three countries are, of course, Australia, United Kingdom, and US. That's where the acronym AUKUS comes from. Sir. Now, what it envisages to deliver? It envisages to deliver underwater capabilities in form of the platforms of submarine. Currently, let's say Virginia class submarines, which the United States is constructing, which will be sort of used by the three countries, because this will be similar platform. There will be technical know-how that they will share. They will participate in construction process. They will participate in their operations. So there will be, of course, interoperability. So essentially, it is a program to bring together their resources to create a platform to meet common maritime challenges of a military nature. That's what AUKUS program briefly is. Now, if you look at it from Australia's point of view, because that's what you asked me, Australia's defense doctrine is essentially not to defend its borders, in the sense that they do not envisage an invasion Otherwise, you look at it, as I mentioned, it's 58,000 kilometers, including the islands.
Right, sir.
And the mainland itself is 30,000 plus kilometers. How do you defend that? So their defense doctrine is that they don't have to defend the country against a possible invasion, but they have to create enough assets to be able to ward off the challenges.
Right.
And including of a maritime nature. So this is where the utility of this program for Australia lies. Now, Australia itself is a maritime country. It has very good capabilities. It has very famous shipyards, and it constructs submarines. It builds. It has another program, by the way, now with Japan, Mogami class frigates. Some of them will be constructed in Japan, some of them in Australia. It constructs its own frigates, Guardian class frigates, for example. It gifts them to other countries. For example, one is being given to Maldives, and there is some conversation about our cooperation, India's cooperation with Australia in maintenance, etc. of that later on, perhaps when it happens. But you see, so there are Australian capabilities also. So one benefit to them of a secondary nature is enhancing their capabilities in terms of submarine construction, both in terms of the contemporary nature of the platform as well as the scale of its production. But there is, since I was in Australia last year and before, there has been some debate in Australia as to how much resources or proportion of the overall resources this program requires, and is it to the detriment of other components of defense? Now, in our country, it's generally the logic that army takes the largest share, the lion's share of the defense budget of the three services.
Correct, sir.
Then Air Force and Navy. In Australia, it is the reverse.
Okay.
Navy takes the largest resources, followed by Air Force, and then perhaps the armed forces. And they call it, of course, the Australian Defence Forces, ADF. So the ADF, the three services, that is broadly their proportion. So the debate is, how much does this AUKUS cost? How much benefits does it bring? And will it bring the benefits in time for Australia to be prepared to meet those challenges? Even as the nature of these challenges is changing every day. We saw not only now in the West Asia conflict, in the Gulf or the Iran war, whatever you want to call it, we saw the role of drones, we saw the role of missiles, we saw the role of other new technologies and platforms. Even before that, we saw it in another theater, which is Ukraine and Russia. So the debate in Australia is, what about other programs? What about other platforms? And I think there is a great opportunity over there for India and Australia to push forward for their defense industry cooperation. When the Honorable Raksha Mantri visited Australia last year, there was a defense conclave which was organized, a roundtable was organized, bringing together the defense industries, private sector, public sector from the two countries, and it was there was so much of enthusiasm. But I admit we cannot immediately go to construction of ships.
That's right.
But we have the requisite trust. We have the requisite convergence of interests. India has the requisite capabilities, both in terms of hardware, the platforms, as well as the systems and subsystems. So time is ripe for Australia and India to look at defense industry partnership.
Okay. So that's a very positive thing, I think perhaps is happening with Australia. And I think in general, if I were to put it in a very common language, the good vibes are going between India and Australia. So,
I would certainly say so, yes. And it is more than that. You see, it's also a factor of how India is perceived.
Yes, sir. Sir, let us shift the discussion a little bit to our immediate southern neighbor, that is Sri Lanka. Okay. You have been an High Commissioner in Colombo, and that is our nearest neighbor in the Indian Ocean across the Park Strait. And maybe if I can ask you, what are the major reflections from your stint as the High Commissioner there? And do you think the relations between India and Sri Lanka are on the right path? Or there is a group of observers in India and watchers who argue that India has perhaps lost that advantage which we had to China. So maybe, sir, a little bit you can elaborate upon that.
Well, that would require another podcast. But let me try to answer in as brief as possible. I would say that perhaps my assignment in Sri Lanka was the highlight of my career.
Yes.
In Indian Foreign Service, and also when I went there, I did not know what would come during that period from 2020 to 23. When I reached there, it was COVID, but then worst crisis for Sri Lanka were to come, which included a very difficult economic situation, virtually an economic meltdown, no foreign exchange, virtually no fuel, very little food, practically no fertilizers, etc., etc., and also political upheaval that resulted in change of the government in rather sudden manner from the street, effectively. As a responsible neighbor, as a big neighbor, as a neighbor which believes in stability, and as the dictum goes, that India's growth is like a wave when which comes in, other boats also get lifted.
Yes, sir.
This is what we did. So I think, to answer your question briefly, the three parts of it, whether India-Sri Lanka relations are on the right path, yes, they are.
Yeah.
But let me go into why they are on the right path. Primarily for three reasons. One, and I'm being candid here, India has stood with Sri Lanka like a rock in all these crises, not just now, even in the past. Mm-hmm. Whether there were floods or the tsunami of the 2000s and later on 2010, 11, those years, in reconstruction of Sri Lanka. But more recently, whether it is the cyclone Titwa or whether it is the economic crisis and meltdown, and virtually not just the fuel supplies but food and everything, most of it was coming from India in those times. And we dispersed, we made available $4 billion within a space of 6 months, from January 2022 to July 2022, and helped Sri Lanka in debt restructuring. Mm-hmm. Although we were not even, India is not a member of the Paris Club, but we played a leading role with other donors of Sri Lanka in arriving at a framework of understanding so that Sri Lanka could go ahead with a debt restructuring schedule, which was important, which was actually essential for Sri Lanka to get the loan from IMF. And how much is the IMF loan? It's $2.9 billion something over a 4 period with all the conditionalities. From India, $4 billion made available, most of it disbursed and used, part of it was used later, but within a period of 6 months.
And so not many conditions.
Well, I'll come to that. Now, what has happened is, as a result, India is perceived as someone which is the she tanker of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka can rely on. Unlike some other countries, which may have contributed to large debts, but they were missing at the time of crisis. They were missing from the table on which constructive discussions were going on for the debt restructuring.
Right.
So people are smart. They understand. And this is why both during my time and now when my successor, Mr. Santosh Jha, is there, we understand that there is a sentiment of positive relations towards India, even before it has been there. But now, because of these crises and the way India has stood with Sri Lanka in the difficult times, what have we gained from it? First of all, stability. In our neighborhood, if you look at it right now, India-Sri Lanka relations are one bright spot now of stability, where there is growing trust and growing relationship, closer economic cooperation, and more connectivity between the two countries. Also, a lot of our projects that were stuck for decades, they have now started moving, and some of those issues have been resolved. But the second reason for India's a different image of India now in Sri Lanka, and India-Sri Lanka relations being where they are, I personally believe that it is because of the fundamental change in the policy. We do not have any political or other favorites in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
For a long time, the Sinhalese majority believed that whatever India was doing was for Tamils of Indian origin, or Tamils who went from India, whether they are in the northern province, eastern province, Jaffna Tamils, or the Indian origin Tamils, the hill Tamils. For a lot of time, the Tamils thought that we are not fully sort of backing them. Yes. These crises which happened, they changed that mindset. Because from the very big, and some people said I can say this now. Some people said, why are you doing this? Why are you helping Sri Lanka? This regime will go away. They will not be here. People don't like them. They are unpopular. See the protests, Aragalya. And they will go. So we said, look, we are not here to support or oppose a regime. That's not our role. We are a neighboring country. What we are doing is for all the people of Sri Lanka. And this message went through. This message, I think, was understood. In diplomacy, you require patience for everything. So I think with the passage of time, people have understood that we don't have an agenda when it comes to standing with Sri Lanka. And we do not have favorites, political or otherwise. If I can just tell you, in the last 3 to 4 years, Sri Lankan presidents and prime minister belonging to every political party have come to India and have found equal warmth in our embrace.
Sir, maybe that speaks of the good work you did.
No, it's not about me. As I said, it's the change in policy. And there I must also say that there is such a close interaction. The Prime Minister our Prime Minister Modi ji has, I think, paid 4 visits to Sri Lanka.
That's right.
There has been any number of visits, I think about 10 visits or maybe more undertaken by the current External Affairs Minister and his predecessor in the last 10 years. And similarly from the Sri Lankan side. So there is a very high level of personal political guidance to this relationship, which helps enormously in introducing the elements and keeping the relationship on the path, on the trajectory of growth. You mentioned about China. Yes, there were a few difficulties for us. For example, it's widely known that the Hambantota port, they have a long lease, and also certain other activities which pose a type of security questions or concerns. I think Sri Lanka has been very clear that they will not allow the territory of Sri Lanka to be used against India's security interests. And what I can tell you is now with the nature of Indian investment, both from public sector and private sector, now with those projects getting implemented and completed, I think if you visit Colombo, if you visit Sri Lanka, you will see for yourself the way those projects have come about and changed. I think there is a shift happening in the public perception in Sri Lanka and also in the way other countries have engaged with Sri Lanka. I think it might be fair to say that we have not let the ground slip. But on the other hand, there is more connectivity. There is a Jaffna to Chennai airlink. There is a Nagapattinam to Kankesanthurai ferry. These things used to be there. In fact, in the old times, there used to be the Sri Lankan people could buy one ticket and come on a boat. And with one ticket, they could not only come on a boat to India, but they could go all over India by the rail system.
Oh.
Now, a lot of people are saying, why don't we start it? Some people are saying, no, why should we not build a land bridge between India and Sri Lanka? So, you see, the more we strengthen, we have the India and Sri Lanka share civilizational connect. Buddhism, Hinduism. There is, there's one of the famous spots people visit is Sita Elia, where Sita ji is supposed to have given Agni Pariksha, and then or Ashok Vatika was there, and then there is a footprint of supposedly of Hanumanji. It's a matter of faith. People go there. Buddhists, any number of Sri Lankan pilgrims come because Sarnath and Bodh Gaya and Kapilvastu. These are the 3 places associated with Buddha in terms of his enlightenment at Bodh Gaya, his sermon at Sarnath and Kapilvastu. So there is no alternative to these pilgrimages. So there is that civilizational connect we have. I think what we should focus on is not to worry about others, but play on our strengths.
Exactly.
We have the strength of civilization. We have the strength of geography. If we play to our strength, geography means what? More connectedness. When we work on more connectedness, when we work more on more connectedness, when we work more rapidly on more connectedness, you would see the difference.
Sir, you would
see more of the difference.
So you speak of that ticket which allowed them to go around India with one single ticket.
Yes.
And I think when was this, if I may ask?
So this was in the 20th century. See, what happened is that the British built a rail system in Sri Lanka, not because they wanted to help Sri Lanka. I mean, let me not attribute motives, but clearly it helped them export tea. And the trains would come from the hill area up to the Sri Lankan west coast. From where they will be put on boats, and the boat would come to Madras or wherever, or I mean Rameshwaram, and then they would Nagapattinam, and then they would go from there to other places for export. Now, what is happening today? Sri Lanka is an important hub of transshipment for India.
That's right.
66% of Sri Lanka's transshipment, containerized transshipment traffic is with India. But India had no presence in the Colombo port till a few years ago. Now we have a presence in the Colombo port. So these are the things: connectivity, working on common maritime challenges, and also, it's true of our other smaller neighbors also. India is a very, very large country, both in geography, population and economy, in comparison with many of our neighbors. We also need to understand, as practitioners and diplomats, as policymakers, to look at their comfort level.
So we need to invest. I think we are already having a kind of a good relations, good rapport, as we have just explored. But I think we need to keep on investing, keep on that zeal with Sri Lanka. And I think that will, it's not about kind of getting back dividends or anything, but that Civilization Connect will keep on strengthening.
See, I would be very frank here. International relations is not philanthropy.
Okay.
That's my personal view. We do help the neighbors. We not only neighbors, extended neighborhoods, like we are first responders. But what happens is, as a result of it, there is a stability, there is peace, there is an overall conducive environment for growth, which also is not such an intangible thing for our own benefit. Plus, if you look at Sri Lanka, where it can benefit from if there is closer economic integration between India and Sri Lanka, the southern states.
That's right.
And the southern states of India have undergone a transformation, if you look at 1980 to now, in the 46 years, and Sri Lankans are aware of it.
Major change.
So they stand to gain, but we also stand to gain from closer economic integration.
Sir, we have just looked at our immediate neighbor in the south, Sri Lanka. Let us move towards our western neighbor, Pakistan, which normally has been viewed as a land kind of neighbor, but it is also an Arabian Sea neighbor to us. How do you then view Pakistan's position in the Indian Ocean security and the Indo-Pacific issues, particularly given their closeness to China?
Well, you are very right. Normally, people would think of Pakistan as a land neighbor, but there is a significant part because they are an Arabian Sea littoral state. And in fact, one of the issues that was being discussed with Pakistan in the bilateral dialogue, composite dialogue, or whatever you call it, was about Sir Creeks. So that, of course, connects to the waters in the context of how the creek was opening out and where the boundary lay. So, as far as the Indian Ocean is concerned, I think geography is very evident. Pakistan is not an Indian Ocean littoral state. It is not a member of Indian Ocean Rim Association. Its coastline is much smaller as compared to India, and we abut Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea, and the Indian Ocean. So our interests are wider, much more in maritime terms. So I think, but we have to keep a close watch on the interaction between Pakistan and China, particularly in the context of the maritime challenges that this region faces from the tendencies which show up in the effort to dominate sea lanes or change the nature of entities in the international waters. So I think therefore there again is the relevance of cooperation, closer cooperation between Indian Ocean littoral states is very important, because they can bring together their respective strengths for the stability and peace and cooperation in the Indian Ocean region.
Sir, again, relating to Pakistan, so we have seen that they had done this opportunity to play a role in this current conflict going on between the United States and Iran. And do you think that that Pakistan will, after this, sharpen their approach to act as a hindrance to our good relations with the Gulf?
Brief answer is that our relations with the Gulf countries today, as they stand, they are on their own. They are very diversified. They are multi-layered, and you have seen in the last few years the way these relationships have developed. You saw the recent visit by the Prime Minister to UAE very recently. You have seen earlier visits in both directions. For example, I'm just mentioning UAE, but there are of course other countries also in the Gulf with which, both in terms of diaspora, investment, energy security, cooperation in digital technology, finance, and a number of other things, our relationships have tremendously grown over the past few years. So I think our relations with Gulf countries have got a strength that I cannot say honestly that Pakistan's relations have got, although it has got its own interaction with them. For example, with Saudi Arabia, there is a predominant and prominent defense and military aspect of relationship that it has had, and some people have also thought of the nuclear bomb or the nuclear capability of Pakistan as in quote unquote Islamic bomb. But I would like to mention another aspect with which you began your question about Pakistan playing a role. I do not think it should surprise us, because if you really look at it, in the 1950s to 1970s, Pakistan was actually part of two formal Western alliances, not one. SIATO, Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, and it has nothing to do with Southeast Asia.
That's
geographically.
Right. Exactly.
And Baghdad Pact, which later on became CENTO. So it was part of these Cold War structures. So I would say that Pakistan chose a certain path since the 1950s of entering into those alliances, whereas India chose another path. We called it non-alignment earlier on, but today, what we practice is multi-alignment. And I would also say that Pakistan pursuing those alliances has not necessarily translated into advantages to Pakistan. After all, isn't it that the West is aware of where Osama bin Laden was found in Abbottabad in May 2011? Yes. And if you really look at it, origins of Osama bin Laden are actually linked to the Mujahideen activities during the Soviet Union time. Right. When Soviet Union was in Afghanistan, and later on, the Taliban support that Pakistan had. Also in a number of ways. In 1971, for example, Pakistan acted as a go-between in terms of and facilitated the rapprochement between US and China. So it has at various points in time acted in support of certain interests that the Western countries may have tried to pursue at that point in time. And but as I said, our advantage, India's advantage, is flexibility. Our advantage is that we bring to each of these relations, whether with Gulf countries or with Western countries, we bring more depth, more color, more substance.
Okay. Sir, again, we also, as India grows, India rises, or we bring out good economic numbers every year after year in this current century. For the last, I think, 25 years that has been happening in India. Do you think there is a scope for India to play a greater cooperative role in the global south? And because we are at SIOS, do you think that especially the countries of IORA, do you think India has a role to play? Because again, it links to the current happenings in the Gulf, in West Asia, whereas a lot of understanding or publicity about the US has been so negative. So do you think India stands to gain as we move ahead with the global south? Are we going to kind of present ourselves as a better actor in the global south, or especially in the IORA?
There is one saying about India that whatever can be said about India, its opposite is equally true. So while India is a very strong voice in Global South and for Global South. But then there are aspects of India's development story, especially over the last few years, which place it in the league of the best of the developed in the so-called first world. Whether you talk of digital technologies, look at India's digital public infrastructure. This text that India has developed, what we are now in the position to offer some of the countries. I mean, you would be surprised to know that some of the very small population countries in the developed world do not have a unique identity-based
That's right,
biometric identity card or system, which India has for 1.4 billion people.
That's right.
So obviously there are aspects of India's development story which provide the whole world, especially the Global South, the opportunities to partner. But even more than that, there is a different model that India has followed, a different paradigm India has followed, and that paradigm inculcates trust. It inculcates partnership, and that comes from the depth of our values, depth of our civilization. When we say Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, it may sound like a slogan, but it is not. It is a philosophy.
That's right.
It is a philosophy translated into practice in our foreign policy. There are countries which people say have large stakes in Africa, but they have followed a different model. India has followed a different model of partnership, not based on exploitation.
Right.
So I think both in terms of raising the issues, and not only raising but advocating and working on them, like in like climate change, disaster resilience, or delivering health and education infrastructure, digital infrastructure. India is in a unique place today, where both the developed world and the developing world want to partner India for different purposes. Yes. The challenge for India is actually to see how best to pursue this leadership role, at the same time pursuing our national priorities and national interests. And what happened during the recent conflict, recent hostilities in West Asia, I think a lot of people say that the question, the policy followed by India, or India said something or did not say something. I think it is not necessary for every time for a country to speak. Speak out, and the important thing is that the international relations are about balancing ideals, power, geopolitics, and interests. And while India is pursuing its own national priorities to be Viksit Bharat by 2047, it is at the same time, as I said, holds a unique position to partner both ends at the same time, and therefore being a channel for both the developed world as well as the developing world.
Right, sir. Sir, let me bring this to close with a very important question, which comes from your two last postings, and which we have spoken already about, Sri Lanka and Australia. So, sir, I would just like to ask about the public perception of India as a rising power in both Australia and Sri Lanka.
I would say that in Sri Lanka, of course, as a neighbor, I spoke of the civilizational linkages. Some very senior people in Sri Lanka told me, for the Buddhist community, they said that for them, it is like an essential thing to undertake pilgrim to the places with which Buddha is associated. In the birth, in their whole life, they must do it.
Oh.
So India's image is of a sister civilization, of a brother, not just as a friend in Sri Lanka, of the sheet anchor, and as a development partner, which answers the needs of the people, and with which greater economic connectivity, greater geographical, physical connectivity is not only desirable, but it will answer the development needs of both the countries, in particular Sri Lanka. In Australia, I think biggest factor that has made the difference, I would say three factors. One is India's own growth over the past several years, I would say 20-30 years, but more recently in the past 10 to 12, 14 years. The consistent growth,
yes,
the political stability. There are not many countries in which you would find the same government voted to power twice,
that's right,
third time. Whereas many other interlocutors have changed, and I have seen this firsthand, having been where I was while I was posted in Delhi. So there is great amount of political stability, but also the voice that India has in the form of diaspora.
Right.
The Indian origin people. Not many people are aware that in Australia, Indian origin population is now second largest, next only to China's, but the fastest growing diaspora in terms of population. And some people also say that the Indian ancestry of the new Australians has overtaken the UK ancestry.
Okay.
But this does not speak just of numbers. The contribution they are making to Australia and the bridge that they are acting as between the two countries. You take any walk of life, there are politicians both at the federal level and the state level and local levels. There are people who are associated with science and technology and entrepreneurship, economic development, finance, pick up even sports. Now Indian origin people, kids are entering into Australian leagues and sports.
So one of them made it to the national team, I think, Jason Sangha.
There are many examples like that in different sports, not just in cricket, but yes, there is a way to go. So I would say that because of India's own economic development, because of political stability and a strong leadership and a very clear vision, and also the people of Indian origin which are contributing very positively to the Australian story and to the Indian story and to their story together at the same time, I think India's image is of a partner, of a very consequential partner of Australia.
And that is true for almost all the Indian Ocean countries. You mentioned about education, health, and that education, health, and provision of the goods. I think that resonates very well in Africa also, which is also a littoral continent in the Indian Ocean.
Absolutely.
So I think India has a lot of. I also agree to this part that India has a lot of goodwill in the international system now, and a lot of which has been generated in the recent years. So with that positive note, we'll end this episode of our podcast. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Professor Meena, for giving me this opportunity, and all the best to you, to the society, and to your viewers.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar.